Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking into the story of Ann Scheiber, an IRS auditor who became a multimillionaire investor.
Yeah, she's quite a remarkable story.
It is.
And perplexing, too.
It really is.
How did this seemingly ordinary woman amass such a fortune? It's a question that's fascinated investors and biographers for years.
It really has, and I think what is really fascinating about her is this sort of paradoxical nature of her life, right? She lived incredibly frugally.
Yeah, lived in a rent-controlled apartment.
Right.
Earned a modest salary, never more than $4,000 a year, and then retired with just $5,000 in savings.
And turned it into millions. It's mind-boggling how she was able to do that.
It really is. And her story, I think, becomes even more remarkable when you consider the historical context, right? So, we're talking about a woman working in the mid-20th century, facing a lot of the discrimination that was prevalent at the time as a Jewish woman.
Yeah, I mean, this is like peak Mad Men era.
Absolutely.
Where, there was a lot of systemic biases. And so just to kind of persevere through all of that and achieve what she did is quite a feat.
Absolutely. And despite being an exemplary employee at the IRS, she was repeatedly passed over for promotions.
It's tough to hear that.
It is. It's a reminder of the challenges that existed back then, but it also makes her achievements, I think, even more impressive.
All the more impressive. But let's get into what was it that made her so successful? What was her secret sauce?
Well, Anne was a devoted follower of what we call the buy and hold strategy. So basically, she invested in companies that she believed in for the long haul.
Okay.
Often holding on to her stocks for decades and, reinvesting those dividends.
Okay, but buy and hold, I mean, that sounds pretty basic. Like a lot of people talk about that with long-term investing.
Yeah.
So what made her approach so successful? Like, was she just lucky?
I think it was more than just luck.
Okay.
She had a knack for picking companies with solid fundamentals and growth potential. So, take, for instance, her investment in Sharing Plow.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this one.
In 1950, she purchased 1,000 shares.
And those turned into a gold mine, right?
Absolutely.
What I've heard.
Through stock splits and dividend reinvestments, which, by the way, is a powerful concept that we should probably unpack later.
Oh, yeah, we should definitely dive into that.
But those 1,000 shares eventually grew to 128,000 shares.
Wow.
Worth a staggering $7.5 million.
Holy cow.
So this really showcased the power of patience and a long-term approach to growth in the stock market.
And, I'm starting to rethink my own investment strategy after hearing that. But I have to ask, wasn't the market a lot different back then? Like, would her approach even work in today's fast-paced, volatile market?
That's an excellent question. And while those core principles of Anne's strategy are still very much relevant, the market landscape has undoubtedly evolved.
So we need to kind of dig deeper into that to figure out, what of her approach can be adapted for the modern investor. But before we do that, I am kind of curious about the companies themselves that she chose. Like, what kind of businesses was she drawn to?
Well, she had a preference for what were then called blue chip stocks.
Okay.
Which were well-established companies with a history of stable earnings and dividends.
Right.
Think companies like Exxon, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo. These were all
sort of mainstays in her portfolio.
Absolutely mainstays in her portfolio.
Interesting. So she wasn't chasing risky startups or, trying to time the market or anything like that.
Right.
Just steady, reliable growth.
That's right. And, her background as a tax auditor played a really crucial role in her investment decisions.
Oh, really?
Anne was incredibly tax conscious, always thinking about how to minimize her tax burden and maximize those after-tax returns.
Wow. So she wasn't just picking good companies. She was picking them strategically to minimize her taxes, almost like she was playing 4D chess or something.
You could say that.
It's incredible.
And her tax-efficient approach is something that we should definitely explore further because it's incredibly relevant for investors today.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
But let's not forget, Anne wasn't just this numbers person. She was a woman living in a specific time and place.
Right. Facing
unique challenges.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about her kind of investment savvy, but what about Anne, the person? Like, was she happy living such a frugal life? Some might even say eccentric.
Yeah.
Did her wealth bring her fulfillment?
Well, that's where her story gets really intriguing.
Okay.
While her financial achievements are undeniable, the details of her personal life paint a much more complicated picture. And to really understand that, we need to kind of dive into her world a little bit deeper.
Okay, let's do it. So we've established that she was incredibly frugal, like bordering on eccentric.
Right? Yeah.
Reports suggest she wore the same clothes for decades,
Wow.
spent next to nothing on food. Like, it's hard to reconcile that image with the multimillionaire investor that we've been discussing.
It is a stark contrast.
Yeah.
And it raises an important question, I think. What was motivating this frugality? Was it just a means to an end? Just a way to maximize her savings and investments, or was there something deeper going on?
Yeah, I mean, her broker, William Fay, he described her as basically an unhappy person,
Yeah.
totally consumed by her securities accounts and her money, that's a pretty bleak assessment.
Yeah, it's not a very flattering portrait. And it
Right.
makes you wonder, was she driven by this need for security,
Yeah.
control in a world where she often felt powerless?
Yeah, and I think, given her background, right,
Yeah.
living through the Great Depression and then experiencing the discrimination that she did throughout her career,
Absolutely.
maybe it was a way of creating a sense of stability
Right, right.
and self-reliance in a world that just felt very unpredictable and often unfair.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a very astute observation.
But, even if accumulating wealth was her primary focus, wouldn't she have enjoyed it more? Like maybe indulged a little bit.
Yeah.
It seems like she denied herself even the simplest pleasures.
I think it's a common misconception that wealth automatically equates to happiness.
Right.
Anne's story is almost a cautionary tale reminding us that financial success, it doesn't guarantee fulfillment.
No, it doesn't. And I think, it's all about finding that balance
Right.
between pursuing our financial goals, but also, nurturing our overall well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there's another layer to her story, right?
Yeah.
A twist that really complicates our understanding of her motivations and adds this kind of surprising dimension to her legacy.
You're talking about her philanthropy,
Yes.
this unexpected decision that kind of left everybody speechless after she died.
Here's this woman who seemingly lived for her investments, right? Pinching pennies her entire life, and then, bam, she leaves her entire $22 million fortune to Yeshiva University.
It was an incredible act of generosity.
Especially considering how private and seemingly detached she was during her life.
Absolutely.
And it gets even more interesting. She specifically directed that the money be used to fund scholarships for women.
That's right.
It's almost like she was trying to empower other women with the opportunities that maybe she had been denied.
I think that detail is really crucial.
Yeah.
It suggests that she was aware of those challenges.
Yeah.
And that she had this desire to create a more equitable future.
Totally. And it really reframes her entire story, right?
It does.
It adds this layer of redemption to her legacy.
Absolutely.
It's like we're seeing a different side of Anne.
Right.
A side that wasn't really visible during her lifetime.
Exactly.
And it makes you wonder, what other kind of motivations or aspirations she may have harbored.
Yeah. And perhaps, her relentless pursuit of wealth, maybe it wasn't just about personal gain.
Yeah.
Maybe it was in part driven by this desire to make a lasting impact.
Yeah.
To use her fortune for a greater purpose.
It's like she was playing the long game.
Right.
Not just with her investments, but with her legacy as well.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
So what does this all mean? Like, what can we as listeners take away from this extraordinary life that Anne Scheiber lived?
I think there are a multitude of lessons.
Yeah.
Some financial, some deeply personal.
Okay.
On the one hand, you see the incredible power of long-term investing.
Right.
The importance of patience, discipline, a tax-efficient approach.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is stuff that anyone can apply to their own, investment journey, regardless of where they're starting from.
Absolutely.
Right.
But I think beyond the financial wisdom, her story prompts us to consider what does success really mean?
Right.
What is fulfillment? And it reminds us that wealth, while it is important, is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance
Absolutely.
between financial security and personal well-being, between pursuing our own ambitions, but also contributing to something larger than ourselves.
Exactly, yeah. And recognizing that everyone has their own unique journey, their own struggles, their own aspirations.
Right.
And Anne's story, I think, challenges us to look beyond the surface and consider those complexities of human motivation.
Yeah.
And the really unexpected ways in which our lives can unfold.
It really is. It's been incredible exploring the life of this remarkable woman.
It has been. It's been a fascinating journey.
But we still haven't addressed the elephant in the room, right?
Oh, the big question.
The big question, Would Ann's investment strategy still be effective in today's market?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And it's one that we're going to tackle head-on in the final part of our deep dive.
So stay tuned as we explore whether her buy-and-hold approach can withstand the volatility.
Right.
And the rapid pace of the modern market.
Absolutely.
We'll also delve into the specific companies that she invested in and analyze their performance over time, so stick around. All right, so we're back and ready to tackle this big question, right? Can Ann's approach to investing still work today?
Well, it's a tough one, Her success was really built during a different era. Like, think about it. Information moved so much more slowly back then, and companies often just grew steadily for decades.
Yeah, it was a different world.
Yeah.
And we talked about how she loved those blue chip stocks, those household names, right?
Right. Schering Plow, Exxon, Coca-Cola, those were like the giants of their time.
And a lot of those companies, they did reward her patience, didn't they? Gave her those excellent long-term returns.
Absolutely. But that's the key, isn't it? Long-term. And she held on to those stocks for decades. She weathered the downturns, didn't get spooked by every little wobble in the market.
But today, it feels like everything's different.
Yeah.
We're bombarded with information 24/7, the market's way more volatile, and technology is changing everything so fast. It's so tempting to try and time the market, Jump in and out of stocks, chase those hot trends.
Oh, I know what you mean. And that's the real challenge, isn't it? Ann's buy and hold thing, it needs a level of discipline and trust that's hard to maintain these days. It's like that fear of missing out, that FOMO, it can really make people jumpy. And honestly, it often hurts their returns in the long run.
So are we saying Ann's approach is, outdated? Is buy and hold dead?
Not exactly. I think those core principles, focusing on quality companies, reinvesting dividends, managing your risk, those are timeless, but we have to adapt them to how things work today.
Okay, how do we do that? How do we take her wisdom and make it work in the 21st century?
Well, for one, we might need to rethink what a quality company even is. Back then, it was those big, stable blue chips. But now, the leaders, they're often these tech companies, innovators, disruptors. And some of them, they don't even pay dividends the way those older companies did.
So we can't just stick with the old names. We need to be looking at these emerging industries, right? The companies that are shaping the future.
Exactly. And we have to be more aware of what's happening globally, how those trends impact different companies and sectors. Ann's world, it was a lot less interconnected, But today, something happens on the other side of the world. There's a new technology, consumer tastes change, and it can have a ripple effect across the whole market.
And technology itself, right? It's made investing easier in some ways, but it's also created this overload of data and analysis. It can be paralyzing.
Oh, absolutely. It's not enough to just have information. You have to know how to sift through it, find the real insights, cut through all that noise.
So it sounds like Ann's approach can still be valuable, but we need to adapt it, right? Refine it, and, maybe more importantly, use some critical thinking and keep doing our research.
I think that's a great way to put it. Learn from the past, but be ready for the future. Remember, the basics of good investing, they stay the same, even if the tools and the landscape are always changing.
Well, this has been fascinating. Ann Scheiber, what a woman, right? Defied expectations, did things her own way. She really showed us that financial success is possible, but it takes careful planning, a long-term view, and that willingness to adapt to a changing world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And she reminds us that while money is important, it's not the whole story. It's about finding that balance. Financial security and a good life, reaching for your own goals, but also giving back, making a difference.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Ann Scheiber. We hope you found it as inspiring as we did. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep on diving deep.